Hey guys, welcome back to RedwingRC, and today what we're going to cover is how to properly install a pin hinge using epoxy. So this is Robart style pin hinges. You could use epoxy, you could use Gorilla Glue or some other alternatives. We're going to choose epoxy. That's kind of the standard, and the way that I do it, this is my favorite way to do it. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need some alcohol to wipe up any little messes. You're going to want to take some paper towels and cut them up into some small squares. So you don't waste an entire roll of paper towels doing a little bit of touch-up. You're going to want some 3-in-1 oil or some kind of oil to lubricate the hinge so that the epoxy doesn't stick to the metal part of the hinge. And lastly, of course, epoxy or glue or whatever you're going to use. This is my favorite way to do hinges. I can do a plane in probably 15 minutes using this method. This is a 3M Scotch weld gun. And I like to use the DP100 epoxy. It's got a 5-minute work life, 3 to 5 minutes I think it is, and cures in an hour. The really cool thing about this is that you can kind of glue in one hinge, let it set up just a touch so it stays thick and you're not just pushing it right out the back side of the wing into the wing cavity. And then you can line up all your hinges on one side, perfectly centered, let that cure, and in 5 minutes it's hard enough that when you go pushing the other surface onto it, you're not pushing them deeper or further away into one side of the wing or the aileron, etc. So I'll show you that in just a minute, but let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, the first step is to take our 3-in-1 oil or some kind of lubricant. You can also use Vaseline or something like that to put in the hinge. But the basic idea is we just want to put a drop of 3-in-1 oil into each hinge that we're going to be doing. I like to, when I'm doing an entire plane, get all of these laid out at once, and epoxy and oil everything at once. I put them up on a couple pieces of tubing so that the oil leaks down to the bottom. I'm just going to let them sit for a minute so the excess oil runs off and that it's only on the center. You want to be sure that you don't get any on the tips or middle of these hinges because that's going to keep the epoxy from binding to those. So you want to make sure that you're only getting it in the hinge. If you feel like maybe you got too much around here, you could always take a paper towel and alcohol and just kind of wipe down the tips of the hinges. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is my favorite way to epoxy planes and hinges in general, is this Scotch weld 3M. And I like this DP100. It's only a 5-minute work life. And the reason I like that, as I mentioned, is we're going to end up gluing into one side and pushing the hinge in, and it'll kind of lock it in place as we start pushing on it with the other surface. The other cool thing about this is, these are kind of expensive. They might be $15, $20 a bottle, and it doesn't look like a lot, but this will last you probably as long or longer than a couple big bottles that you mix because you have zero waste. You put on this nozzle, and it mixes evenly every single time, just instant. And then this cap seals it, so you throw the nozzle away. These are $1 or $2 a piece. And then, the next time you use this, you'll put a new nozzle on, put this cap on to keep it fresh. And it works like a charm. Just really super simple. This has quickly become my favorite way to do it, and I'll show you how it works. Alright, just slide the cartridge into place and lock it down with the label face up. And we're going to put the nozzle lightly in, not putting it all the way into the recess, and just fill it up until it starts kind of coming out the front. That way we get a nice clean fill. You don't want to just push the nozzle all the way in there and just send it down the inside of the plane. You want it to just be flush on the outside. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other ones as well. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and let that set up just for a minute. This has a 5-minute work life, so we're just letting it get a little bit tacky so it's not so viscous. And once it's rested for about a minute or two, we don't want to let it get too long because this will harden into a solid pretty darn quick. But just enough that when we go to push these in, they're not just going to push all that right out. That's going to kind of fight the epoxy a little bit. Then we're going to put our hinge in, make sure that it's angled the correct orientation for the surface. And then we're going to push this in until that metal pin is lined up exactly with the point of the hinge. And then we're going to let that dry just like that before we start working on the opposite surface. Okay, so we're just going to let the hinges cure in that one side so they're nice and hard. So when we go to push on the rudder, it's not going to push those pin hinges in to the vertical stab. And so normally I would be working on every other part of the plane, working on one side of a surface and hinge at a time. So this nozzle will not get hardened with the epoxy because it continues to flow, but all my surfaces are hardening. That way, again, you're not just pushing those hinges out of line. Now we're going to go ahead and use the epoxy gun to fill the other cavities on the rudder side. Okay, now that you've got glue into the rudder side, just one hinge at a time, you're going to start on one end and work your way up to the other, aligning each pin. And then carefully push it into place. And you want to go ahead and push your surface all the way closed so it's nice and tight, but then make sure that you've got full deflection in both directions. So you're kind of pushing in at the same time you're testing your deflection so that you get full deflection with minimal gap. I think that's pretty good right there, and we'll just let that cure and dry. All right, guys, and there's the basics of how to epoxy pin hinges into place. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to RedwingRC's YouTube channel to find more helpful videos, and remember to go to RedwingRC.com.